Hey everybody out there, this is Jared Platt and we are coming to you from Profoto. This is the Profoto webinar and we are all about shaping light and talking about lighting and photography. So couple housekeeping issues. We are live right now, which means that you can ask questions. So if you have any questions, please over on the right hand side of your screen you'll see a question area. You can ask questions there, and we've got people looking at those questions and triaging them for us, so we'll be happy to answer your questions. And today we're going to be doing a lot of different setups, so feel free to ask questions. We want to answer as many as we can get to, so please start those questions and we will look at them and try and get to them. Today we are going to be going through a number of setups. All of them are on location lighting. They're all done with the B1 heads because I don't think any of these locations really had power accessible, maybe one or two of them, but we're using battery operated B1 heads from Profoto, and we are going to be in situations where we want to do lighting pretty quickly, but we want to have some really stellar lighting. We're going to be competing with sun a lot, so we're going to be matching that sun and trying to deal with ambient and strobe all at the same time. So that's what we're dealing with today, so let's get to it. Our first photograph that we're going to show was actually taken in Barcelona. So we were in Barcelona, Spain, and we were doing a workshop. Cut to the photo now. This is the photo that we're dealing with, and this is the final shot. You can see that the light comes in from that right-hand side of the frame. But let me show you what the original shot looked like, and then we'll talk about the photo. So the original shot, hold on, let's see, there we go, there's the original shot. I need to show you this schematic to help you understand what's going on here. So we have an archway. We're underneath an archway. So this is the edge of an archway, and over the top of the camera and over the top of the model is an archway, and then on the other side there's exactly the same wall on the other side just behind me. And so the sun actually, even though it's right overhead, it can't hit us, and so the sun is kind of softly filling through both sides of the archway at the same time, and it's perfectly even lighting on both sides. So we've got the sun coming on both sides. So cut back to that photo now. If you look at the photo now, that'll make a little more sense. You can see how even the lighting is, and if you look at her face, it's just really evenly lit. If she's closer to the right-hand side of the archway, she's going to get light coming from that side. If she's closer to the left hand, she would get more light coming from that side, but it's just really evenly lit. So now if you look at the final shot, you can see that there's a really definite direction of light. So that definite direction, zoom in, you can see now she's got a shadow on the front side of her face, the front of her face here, and then right here looking towards the light, it looks more now like there's actually light coming in from one side rather than from both sides, because generally speaking we want some kind of direction of light in a photograph so that we have some kind of shape to the face and just something interesting to look at. And so what we've done here then, if we go to the schematic, is I lowered the general exposure enough, not too much, but just a little bit, so that instead of using the ambient light as the main exposure, I lowered that by about a stop below that, below the ambient exposure, and then I brought in a medium silver umbrella here, just off to the side. So just as you can see that my lens is going to just barely get this column here, so just barely outside of the frame of the camera is where I put that, and that's what's lighting her from that side. And that's all. That's the entire setup. It's not very difficult, and it was just done with TTL. So I'm using the Air Remote TTL, and it's making the determination on how bright it wants it to be, and then I can of course increase or decrease that based on the flash compensation settings inside the camera. Which I think I actually increased it just a little bit, but not too much, maybe a third a stop. But it did most of the work all by itself. But the direction of light is what was important in that shot to create something that was a little bit more interesting than just flat light. So if you look at that shot again, you can again see the difference between really flat light, and then we drop the exposure just a tiny bit, and then we add that flash in, and that flash gives us that nice direction of light that gives us a nicer shot, makes the shot a little bit more interesting. So that's the first shot. Very simple concept, nothing amazing, but just a very simple concept. So you can see in the video here that's where I see how it's just right off of her, just as close as it can be without being in the shot. So that's all there is to that shot. But I'm going to start building in things. We're going to start with that shot because then we're going to get more and more complicated as time goes. So the next shot that we did, again in Barcelona, this shot is in an alleyway. And this time I want to show you the difference between a completely ambient shot and a flash shot, a combination of the two. So right now we're actually looking at a completely ambient shot. What you've got in this situation, let me show you this diagram really quickly before we go any further, just so that you get a sense of where we are. So we're here in an alleyway, and there's a church back here, and the sun is striking that church. But the sun is also striking a building behind me. And so when I'm photographing the model gets a forward light down this alleyway that kind of lights her up just a little bit. And then the church is really bright. And so my main concern when I'm first photographing this scene is to get this church under control so that it's just, decently lit instead of just totally blown out. And then the model is close enough here to the opening of this area, so this is actually where the walls end, and then there's a street here, and then there's a building here that's getting some light. And so if you zoom into her, you can actually see that she's got some catch lights in her eyes. Those catch lights are from the building over here on that wall. This is all ambient. It's completely ambient. There's no flash whatsoever on this. But let's roll the video so that you just get a sense of our space here. So as we roll that video, you can see there she is, and the building behind me is going to be lighting her. You can see all these cross lights that are happening on the buildings themselves, the light coming down. I'm showing her what I want her to do. She's going to just kind of walk up and down that street, and then here's all my students, and we're photographing her. You see, but it's all ambiently lit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare that to the idea of using a flash. And you can see, pause that right there. You can see where, there we go. You can see where that light is. That light is pounding into that wall, right? That's me, I like that. The light is pounding into that wall, and that's going to be the side light that we're going to use to light her up just a little bit differently. Again, we're just augmenting the light just a little bit. Just like in the last shot, mostly the ambient was fine. So if we come back to the schematic then, the ambient light in this situation is pretty fine too. It works pretty well. You saw that shot and it looks pretty good just on its own. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to augment it a little bit and make it just a little bit better with one flash. All we need is that one flash pointing into the wall. And that one flash pointing into the wall, because it's a kind of a warm toned wall, is actually going to cast some nice warm light over on her as well. So I want you to now compare the two. So we did a shot with her, and then we did another shot with her with so there's the comparison between the two. And I'm going to actually go into the compare mode so that I can zoom in. So this is ambient over here. That's completely ambient. Look at her face and look at the shadow under her chin, down her neck. There's shadow on this side of her face, on the left and on the right-hand side of her face, because the only light that's coming in to strike her is coming straight forward down that alleyway. Now, if you come to this shot here, you can see that now there are more than one catch light. There's the main catch light that's coming from the buildings behind her, but then there's also a catch light over on the right-hand side, and that's just the light from the flash. But notice the difference below her neck. It's a very large light source now because it's hitting the wall, and then the wall becomes a very large light source. But see how it lights up under her chin a little bit? You get actually a little bit of a shadow now happening under her chin, but it's not a soft one like this. It's got a little harshness to it because the light is actually coming down and striking your chin. But the thing to really notice here is see how there's a shadow on the left-hand side of her face, but on the right-hand side of her face there is no shadow. And also notice on her nose, there's a shadow on the forward side of her nose and no shadow on the back side of her nose, which gives her a little bit of a short lighting condition. You can see that kind of triangle happening on her cheek there. It's just giving her face a little bit more volume from the side. Now, both of these photographs are absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with an ambient shot as well. Ambient is beautiful and I love it. I really like this ambient shot. I do. But sometimes you just need to know the difference of what you can be doing. Sometimes you want to cross a side light, sometimes you want that forward light, but you can make something look a little bit different just with one flash, changing that direction of light. What we've done is we've overridden the direction of light with a flash. So because in shade, you have a great opportunity. I love open shade because you have the opportunity to take what already exists and increase it with the flash so that your flash becomes the main light source. So you completely control what the direction of light is and how everything gets shaped. Whereas when you're out in the open sun, sometimes it's harder to do that. But open shade, it's really easy to do that simply because it's such a dark environment anyway that the smallest amount of flash can really change the way a photograph looks. Again, that's a really simple example of using one flash just to change the direction of light. Now in that case, we didn't really need to change the ambient exposure all that much. You notice that the ambient exposure on the background is the same in both shots. I changed the f-stop. So originally we were shooting at a different f-stop at 1,000th of a second, different ISO. So I wanted the background to be a little more out of focus when I use the flash, and so you can see that I've got the background a little bit more out of focus here, using a little bit of a different f-stop and obviously a different shutter speed. So in this one where she's walking, I needed 1,000th of a second so I could stop her movement. In this one, because I was using flashes and I didn't have high-speed sync on them just yet, I needed to slow it down to a 200th of a second, which meant I had to change things a little bit. But in the end, we kept the same general exposure. You can see that because this is all ambient on the background. The light here that's hitting this building, the light here that's hitting this building, it's the same exposure, the same equivalent exposure. All we did is add enough flashlight to kind of push things from right to left instead of straight on her. I have a couple questions coming in, so I'm going to quickly answer those. The first question is, does bouncing the flash not color the... Yes. Okay, so the question was, does bouncing that flash off of that wall, does that actually color the flash? It absolutely does. So because it's a bit of a brown wall, it's not a super brown wall, it was kind of neutral but a little bit warm, and so that warms up the light coming over to the model, which I'm fine with because I like the warm light, so I'm fine with it. If that had been like a peach wall or a purple wall or something like that, then I would have had a problem and I wouldn't have gone that direction. I would have turned the flash towards her and then used a modifier of some sort, either a softbox or an umbrella or something, in order to have that light coming straight forward at her. So yes, it will actually color the flash depending on what you're looking at. So this is important when you're looking at you're inside and you're bouncing light off of walls in order to kind of light up say a reception hall or something like that. You really have to pay attention to what kind of light is in the room, or I mean what kind of walls are in the room, because if they're maroon walls, they're going to really color up your light. So then you need to turn them away from the wall and use direct light. And that's why we have all these great modifiers, which we're going to go into in just a second. So let's go on to another shot here. We're going to go to the next shot we have here is a really interesting one. Let me turn this off, compare mode here. So this one was interesting because we're out in the bright sun. So go ahead and show that photograph. You can see that we're out in the bright sun, but we want to make, first off, I want to make the experience pleasant for her, for our model. And the problem is that the sun is literally, we didn't have an option as to when we were shooting this, and so we have the sun barreling in on us, and the direction that we want her to look is where the sun actually is. And so that's not a good opportunity there for us. So what we've done is we've modified everything. We've created open shade. So let me show you the video, and you'll see that what we've done is we've created open shade for her. We've made a cloud for her, and we're going to shade her in the cloud, and then we're going to relight her. So we're creating our open shade to kind of tone down the general sunlight, and then we're going to rebuild the lighting after that. So go ahead and play that video. So you can see where I am. I'm over on the left-hand side there, far away, shooting towards her, but up in the freeze, there we go, freeze that. So you can see right up above her is a large translucent umbrella. So that's actually the deep, large, translucent umbrella. And we've got it hooked up to a stand, a C-stand, and it is blocking the sun. You can see the sun is kind of behind that telephone pole, and it's coming down and just, it's creating, you can see the circle there that's happening in the pool. That's the shadow. So we want that shadow to shade her so that she can look in the right direction, and it softens up all of the light that's hitting her skin. It doesn't create a complete dark shadow. That's why we use a translucent umbrella, so it's just a light shadow. You could use a scrim for this, but sometimes a scrim is really big and unruly, and a soft umbrella like that translucent umbrella is really nice for just hooking it onto a stand. It stands on its own. It's very easy to move around. You don't have to build it. You just pop it up and stick it up there. So I just simply take this umbrella here, and we just, you know, I mean, how much easier is it to do that and create the shade that you want than it is to set up a whole scrim system and all that kind of stuff. So that's my preference. If I have one person or two people that I want to put in some shade, I'll just use that translucent umbrella to create that shade. And then we go in and start lighting it. So let's look at the schematic now. That you've seen the video. You can see where we are here. So I'm here, we've got a translucent umbrella up here, and that's what's creating the shade around our model. And you'll notice in the shot that there's a little bit of shade on her. So if you, let's zoom down on her, and you can see that there's shade right there. See, that's the edge of the shade. And so I could go in and kind of remove that if I wanted to or not. But I tried to put it as close to the edge as possible so that I didn't have a really large piece of shade that looked too much like an umbrella itself. I wanted it to not be quite as obvious. So I left the rest of the shade going behind her in the pool. So I'm shooting here, and then the direction of sun is just fine for me, but I want to control that direction of light. I want to be the one actually creating the light. Plus, if you're lighting someone with the sun, it's a harsh, it creates a harsh shadow, it's really hard light, and they squint while they're looking at it. So in this case, what I've done is I've cut the sun back so that it's not making her squint, and it's not a hard light source anymore. And then I'm going to add back the light with the big, I have that a medium silver umbrella. So it's a deep silver umbrella. It's going to pound a lot of light back towards the subject. You can see it right there. It's that silver umbrella. It's deep, so it creates the light's going to travel in a very directional way, and because it's silver and it's got that shape to it, it's really popping a lot of light, and it's increasing the light going that way. So in most cases, you look at an umbrella and you think, okay, as I go into that umbrella, I'm going to lose a lot of light, so I've got to overpower the light. And when you're trying to overpower the sun, that's pretty difficult. But when you're using one of these deep silver umbrellas, it's actually kind of magnifying that light, so you can actually get an increase in the light coming out. as opposed to turning around and getting a bare head, you can actually get more power than a bare head facing forward out of one of these deep silver umbrellas, because it's really kind of magnifying that light. So I don't have to worry about the problem of not being able to overpower the sun, because I've got 500 watt seconds that are being magnified, pushed towards her. So it's very easy to light her up and shape her the way I want her shaped, but instead of a tiny little speck light, which is the sun, I've got a much larger light source, and so it's giving me a little bit softer light on her. And then, of course, we have in the background here, it's a kind of a kidney-shaped pool, and we have a background light right at the edge of the pool that has a grid on it that's pushing light back towards her to give her a rim light. And let me show you the difference between those lights now. So this is what the photograph looks like if you have no light on it. See, we've put her in the shade, so she's in soft shade or in soft light right now, but if I want to expose for the background, she's going to be way too dark. So obviously I have to add some light. And so what we've done is we've added this light here. That's the forward light being added, and so you can see that it's got a direction to it. There's shadow on one side of her face, there's highlight on the other side of the face. But you can see how her hair, being dark, is getting a little too close to the darkness of the shadow, and so she's not separating out of the background as much as I'd like her to, and that's why in the end we add the flash in there, so that helps to separate her out from the background. So we've got that nice light here, and that all is a rim light. That's not the sun, but it looks like it's the sun lighting her up, but it's just a rim light doing that. But the important thing to notice in this video is, if you look at the video, all the light's coming from the same area in the same direction. All of it's coming from the right-hand side, and that's where the sun would be coming from anyway. And so if you look at the buildings in the photograph behind her, they're being lit by the sun, and then we are creating our own sun with our rim light, which is giving her those hard lights on the edge of her shoulder and her hair. And then we're also using that deep silver umbrella, and both of those are also coming from that side. So the sun comes from this side, and our hair light comes from that side, and our deep silver umbrella, our main light's coming from that. Everything's coming from that side in order to make it look like she's actually in the same circumstance. If I started lighting her from this side, she would then pop out differently. She would look like she wasn't in there. It would look like I was green screening her. Okay, so let's look and see. Okay, a couple more questions coming out. Do I prefer a silver or a white umbrella? So there's a difference between the silver and the white umbrella. The white umbrella is very soft, very beautiful light, and it kind of creates a warmer light too. But the silver umbrella I use in a very specific set of circumstances. Silver is pounding a lot of light. I mean, it really reflects that light. And you can see here in the background, we're going to be using this one a couple times. This is our extra large silver umbrella. And so this one is huge, a very large light source, but it's also pounding a lot of light forward. So when you need a lot of light, but you want a very large light source from like an umbrella, that's when the silver comes in really handy, because now it's going to pound a lot of light forward, but it's still a very large, soft, or large light source, and therefore fairly soft. Now, you can also use, and I really like this option here, so you can also use a silver umbrella, and then you can take, Profoto now has the ability, has like a diffuser that goes in front of this thing. So you can put you put this on your flash, and then you take a diffuser and throw it in front of it, and then you have a nice soft light source, but it's pounding a lot of light. You're not losing any light, and it's a really strong light with a little bit of a diffuser in front of it. So that's an option as well. But the silver just allows for more light to end up coming back towards the subject. So that's why I use the silver umbrella when I'm outside more often, because I'm trying to match the sun, and the sun is fairly powerful. That being said, I also use the white umbrella a lot, but most of the time when I'm using the white umbrella, it's inside. It's in shade. It's in places where I don't need as much light because I prefer the soft light of an umbrella, but sometimes that just doesn't provide enough light to overpower the sun. Okay, so next shot we're going to go to is a cool shot on the in the desert out here in Phoenix. We're doing some bike shots, so this is the shot for that. If you notice that we're shooting this at sunrise, so the sun is really, I mean, that's just super bright sun coming through over here. But we've got the sky coming in, so I've got the sky. I've also got him lit, and I've got the bike rider behind him lit. And that's challenging because if I were to show you what it looks like without flashes, that's what it looks like without flashes. So it's very dark on the forward side. You can't see the cactus, you can't see the... so without some kind of flash, I'm not going to get a lot of work. And if I want to expose for him, this is what I'm going to get. So I'm not going to get the drama to it when the sun is blowing out that sky. I'm not going to get enough drama to the shot if I'm just shooting this thing with ambient light. And so it was quite a challenge to get this together. So let me show you the schematic on that, and then we'll run the video so you can see how things are operating. So here we have our mountains here. The sun's coming over and lighting them, and that's what's giving us that backlight. That's what's giving us that beautiful rim lights on both of the bikers as well as all the cactus and stuff like that. But what we have in this shot, I'm right here, and I'm focusing on this guy, and then this guy's just an extra element in the background, but he still needs to be lit. So we have a 4-foot octabank right here. So this 4-foot, it's just a big soft box, but instead of a soft box, it's an octagonal shape. And so it's 4 feet. That's what we've got as close as we can get to him as he rides by. That's what we're getting with him. That's what's lighting him. It's a nice, soft, very large light source that's going to light him in a nice, soft way, but it can look fairly natural. And then over on the back here, we've got another light. I could have used another octabox, or I could have used you know, a bare head or something like that, but I really wanted to get a fairly large light source that kind of matched this one over here, about generally the same size, not quite as big, didn't need to be quite as big, but I needed it to cast a long way because I can't put this flash as close to my second rider as I could put the main light source, the soft octabox here. I can put this close to the front guy, but I can't put a light really close to the back guy. And so I'm using, again, that silver deep umbrella. This one's the medium one. And I'm aiming it at him so that will really cast a long way and really put a lot of light into that, but still fairly large. Because if I turned it around, if I turned the flash around and I put, say, a zoom reflector or something like that on, it would get a lot of light there, but it would be a pretty small light source. So I want it to be a little bit bigger so that it's a little softer back there, and so that's why I'm using this. So play that video and you're going to see how this operates then. So we've got, see, I'm putting that light on. That's the one that's the main light, the octabank there, and so this is kind of where they're going to be. He's going to be pretty close to me, the front guy. I'm going to be shooting, and that octabox there is pointing at him. See, watch them ride, and I've got to nail it right there. And then we keep doing that over and over and over, and bam, and that's where we're getting the shot. So you can see how I had to have them timed perfectly so that the back guy was right in the light for the deep silver umbrella, and the guy in the front for our octabank. So we had to have them both timed pretty well, but that's another good reason to have a decent light spread on my umbrella, casting a pretty large light source, so that if he was a little bit forward, a little bit back, we would actually get it right at the right time. So anyway, that's how we lit that shot. And you can see then, once we go to the final shot, you can see that we've got a nice soft light here on his face. It comes, and one of the things with hard light would have been that you would have gotten a really hard shadow because he's got this helmet on, and so having that soft box allows you to get underneath and light from underneath and above the helmet at the same time. So even though there's a little bit of shadow, it's a nice soft shadow that's happening there instead of a harsh shadow. And then of course you can see that the silver umbrella is lighting our second biker, but not quite as strongly. But it's certainly, there's no way you would see his face. His face would be really, really dark if we didn't have that umbrella lighting him up. So that's important. But again, we're matching the ambient exposure. Now, here's the trick with this shot. This shot was shot at 100 ISO at a 60th of a second. 60th of a second at f5. So I shot it at f5 because I wanted to make sure that if the rider of the bike happened to be a little bit forward, a little bit back of where I used to be, that I can get the focus because things are moving. But also 60th of a second, there's a lot of movement in it, and so you're going to get that movement in the bicycle itself. And so what you've got here is you've got movement going on, but it's frozen by the flash. You can see that there's some movement happening, around his arm just a little bit, things like that, but he's frozen by the flash because the rest of the surrounding is so dark. Remember, this is kind of what it looks like without the flashes. And so without the flashes, you wouldn't see his face, and so that's why that flash helps to freeze the action.
Do you use an ND filter?
Oh, people are asking. So in this condition, I don't think we needed an ND. I don't think we needed an ND filter because it was so early in the morning. It was dark enough. So I don't think we were using an ND filter. It's possible that we used one, but I'm pretty sure we didn't. We've used ND filters in some of these other shots, but not in this one. Okay, so let me look and see if we have any questions about that shot. Oh, okay, here's a good question. How about the ratio between ambient and flash in percentages? Well, I don't know if I can give you an exact percentage of the ambient ratio, but generally speaking, my first goal is to find my ambient and make sure the ambient's right. So I've got my ambient light. When I come up, I'm going to look at the sky because I can't light the sky up. The sky is what it is, and so I have to get the exact exposure that I want for the sky. I wasn't so worried about right around the sun because we all kind of expect that to blow out anyway, but I definitely wanted to have blue in the sky. I wanted to have something there that would show that it was a nice cool morning, and so that blue sky helps with that. So the first thing I do is get an ambient exposure for the sky because I can't light it. And then the other thing that I have to worry about a little bit is I need to get an ambient exposure that also allows for the general ambient conditions all over in my entire mountain range and all the cactuses. Even though I want them to be a little bit dark, I want them to be bright enough that you can see them. And so in this case, I had to actually push it a little bit brighter than I wanted because I would have liked a little bit more of this area of the sky to come in. But instead, I had to sacrifice this just a little bit in order to get more of the ambient in the cactus and things like that. So once I've got that exposure, then I'm going to go in and add my flash. And in this case, we literally start with TTL. So we just turned both flashes on, turned on the TTL, and fired away. And it did a pretty good job at giving us the correct exposure. So that was the original exposure with TTL. So you can see that the final is a little bit brighter, but that was the original exposure with the TTL, and it was thinking, oh, it doesn't need too much light because there's that big bright sun coming in, and it just saw it as, oh, I don't need all that much light because there's plenty of light that exists. It was just a little bit off, and so we just had to increase the exposure a little bit. So we started with TTL, let it do its calculation, and then we turned it to manual right after that, and then just increased the forward flash just a little bit. So maybe by about 2/3 a stop or a stop is what we increased this flash to. And I don't think we increased this flash at all because I think it was pretty dead on. So that's what we did for that. Okay, let's go on to another shot here. Well, I'm gonna go to a really complicated shot, and that's going to be at a. Basically, it's sundown, it's nighttime, and we are doing a shot at a restaurant. And so this one's a fairly complicated shot because we have to now, instead of the sun being the ambient, now it's the interior lights inside of this restaurant that are the ambient light. So in that case, I again come in and I first have to get the ambient light, and you can see when I take the picture, that's the ambient light that I'm trying to get. I've got to burn that in. So that's my first shot, is just look for that ambient light and see how long it takes to burn that ambient light in. So in that case, our final exposure ends up being a 400th of a second at an 1/8 of a second. I'm sorry, 400 ISO at an 1/8 of a second. So 1/8 of a second is how long we have to burn in order for us to get the ambient exposure from the bar and all the lights inside to really burn in and be nice. And you can see in this final shot that we've got some really nice ambient light going on in the backgrounds, all the sparkly lights. You even get ambient lights from the kind of the Christmas lights that are reflecting off of here and off of here that are all around the street. So the ambient light is perfect at that exposure. But even with that kind of ambient light, this is what you get for your shot. Your ambient light doesn't give you enough light to light up our subject. So I know that the subject is going to be frozen by the flash. So then it's just a matter of building in the flashlight in order to create our final shot. So in this case, we have ambient light that is really warm. And so the first thing that we have to do is take all of our flashes and we put a CTO gel on them. It's a 1/4 CTO, so color to orange. So it's just an orange gel on each light. And you can see I've done that here on this flash here. You can see I've just taped a CTO on there. So just an easy CTO, tape it on the flash, and that's what's going to give us that match in order for the light to match the ambient light that's happening in here. Because your flashes are always balanced to daylight. And so they match daylight perfectly. So when you're trying to match ambient light in the day with a flash, it just works. It's the right color. But once you start going inside, then you've got to change. Otherwise, you'll have blue light hitting your subject, and you'll have this warm light coming forward. And that's okay if you want your main lights to be super, super warm, because if you end up color balancing your camera to the flash, these people will be corrected, and this will be super, super warm. But I want it to be more even. So it looks like it was lit by the current ambient light, which is all orange light. Okay, so in this condition, so go ahead and roll the video and we'll talk over the video and show you what's going on here. So you can see that I've got that big silver umbrella behind me, and I'm shooting on a tripod so that I'm not moving anything. And then I've got everybody standing there in the center. Pause right there, pause. See that light over the lady's head? Just to the left and over the lady's head? That is one of our lights. So that's a cross light that's happening. So it's just a bare head, and it's just coming barreling towards them to create a cross light on them, give them some direction of light. So the main light here, this deep silver extra large umbrella, that is kind of our fill light. That's what's filling them in and filling everybody in here. And you notice that it's just off to my right and above me, and that's what's filling them in. And that's also, by the way, what is lighting the restaurant up as well. So the top, the MSK logo at the top of this photograph right here, that's being lit as well by that silver umbrella. So that silver umbrella, as you can see, that's kind of the top of its light coming in, and then there at the bottom it's light, so it's a big circle of light coming in like this. So that's what's lighting all of them up. But you can see this cross light that's happening right here, that light on her head right here, and you can see the shadow being created by that light off to the right of the way right of the camera. It's a bare head, and it's coming and giving cross light so that her shadow is hitting here, so there's a bit of a shadow on him. You can see the same thing happening here, so this is lighting them. So without that cross light, we wouldn't have enough direction of light, and it would be a little too flat. So that cross light helps to make that happen. And then we also, you can see that there's another big blast of light coming in through the window here. And that light is our rear light, which is what's giving them that rim. See that light that's happening on his hair right there? On her hair right there? That's what's lighting them up and separating them from the background, is that light inside. The other thing that light inside is doing, and we'll see it here in a second in the video, the other thing that light inside is doing is helping to light the interior of the, there it is right there. That's the light. It's pretty dark, but you can see it right in the middle of the frame up high. And it's coming out the window, but it's also lighting the inside of the restaurant a little bit, so that there's just a little bit more light to help light up some of like the tables back there. And then there's some people. You can see there's some people back there as well. And so that's helping to light them up a little bit as well. So that's a 3-light situation that we have to use. A bare head, another bare head inside the restaurant, a bare head over to the right of the restaurant, and then one big huge umbrella right pretty much behind the camera that gives them a nice fill light, and that's how we got that shot. This whole thing was definitely a manual operation type thing, because if you have this light coming directly towards your camera, it's going to fool the camera and the lights into thinking that there's more light than there really is, and so it's going to power down other flashes. And so we started this in manual and just took some shots and increased our various lights based on how much power we needed for each light. So again, generally speaking, I can always assume that this backlight is going to be more powerful than my forward light, and this is going to also be more powerful than my forward light's going to be the weakest light on the set, and then the other lights are going to be the stronger lights on the set, because that's what's creating that drama and that direction of light. Let's see if we have any more questions we can answer. Okay, so question is asked, what camera exposure mode is being used? In all of these cases, the camera is in manual mode. Sometimes I'll use a aperture priority mode or a shutter priority mode based on very specific circumstances, but almost in all cases I'll use manual, especially when I'm dealing with flash, because I don't want anything to change so that the flashes have to start changing as well. So manual is the way to go in almost all cases. Now I will tell you, in times where I am moving around, and if I have an assistant that has a light on a pole and we're just kind of moving through the street, we're walking through the street, and my assistant, I'm just saying, go over there and point this there, and we're just shooting and turning and moving corners, and everything's fluid, and we're going into shadow, and then we're going into, you know, the sunlight, things like that. Then I will actually change my exposure mode to aperture priority, and that way the ambient is being controlled by that aperture priority mode, and then I allow the TTL on the flash to take care of the flash exposure, and then I just have to change my compensations. So I'm working in the compensation. I'm working on the flash compensation for that fill light that's being used, or that directional light that's being used from the flash, and then I'm using the camera exposure compensation to compensate for maybe a sky that's fooling the camera or something like that. But that's only when I'm moving really rapidly, taking pictures. Sometimes that might be in an engagement session, or that might be in a wedding portrait session, where we're just moving and we're just rapid firing as quickly as we can to get the thing done. That's the only time I will go into an automatic mode when I'm using flashes. It's just better to stay in manual if you can. Okay, so let's go to another shot. This shot was in the same series of photographs, same area, but this is a particular favorite of mine, and so I'm going to show you this one now. This one is the couple is pretending to be shopping, and you can see in the background there's a nice, jewelry shop back there. But you get that beautiful light coming down the street here, just kind of raking towards them. I like the glare that's happening on the right-hand side of the frame. It's moving towards them. They're really separated out from the background because of that, and it just feels like they're just walking down around sunset, down the boulevard and shopping. Well, what's happened in this shot is we have a series of lights. We have one light, which is going to be the light that gives them their main direction of light and their fill light to light them up. But the really critical flashes are back here in the background. One of them is the hair light coming forward at them, and then another one is a bare head light. The hair light coming towards them has a zoom reflector on it, so that it's not wasting any light on this, spreading out. It's all coming forward because it's quite a ways away from them. And on that shoot that day, we were trying very hard not to waste any energy because we were moving around, and I think we shot from sun up till 2 hours after sundown. And so we had to keep our batteries throughout that whole day. And we were able to do it with only one time where we had to recharge all the batteries. And so basically we have 4 heads, 6 batteries, and we recharged 2 batteries throughout that process in full. It was during that shoot we had taken a couple batteries into the shop, plugged them in, and let them charge while we were shooting. How many did we get? 18 different shots. So we got 18 major different shot setups in that day with our 6 batteries and 2 rapid chargers that charged up 2 batteries at full. So the ability to move around and do a lot with these batteries is pretty incredible. But anyway, so we were trying to, if you want to save battery, then think about the reflectors and think about the modifiers you're using to help that happen. Like for instance, if you use a big silver umbrella, that's going to save a lot of battery life because you don't need as much power to get the light coming out of that umbrella. If you use a bare head, you're going to have more power on that bare head unless you use either a zoom reflector or a telezoom reflector or a magnum reflector. If you use any of those, they're helping to intensify the light source and you're not wasting any light. So therefore, you'll spend less energy. So just think about the reflectors you're using and how much you're having to compensate in power for the type of reflector or the type of light shaper you're using. And that will help you to save a lot of battery life. The other thing that helps to save battery life is this, the ISO. Now this shot is shot at 400 ISO, which on a Mark II or Mark III camera, a Canon Mark III, or any of the modern Nikons, the ISO is so good at 400. There's almost no reason to be at 100. And so you've just saved a lot of battery life on flashes by increasing your ISO just a stop or two from its normal ISO. So I'm shooting at 400 ISO, which is beautiful for my camera. And then I'm shooting at a 200th of a second because of the sync speed, and then at f4. And I like f4 in this shot because I like the background to be somewhat in focus but not completely in focus. So I think it's about perfect. So now, if you look at this, go ahead and play that video and watch. So I'm shooting here with the deep umbrella, and they're just kind of walking back and forth because I want that shot. And that's the big light is what's giving them that soft light that you see on them. And then you can see in the background, pause that right there. So right there. So that one with the zoom reflector is their hair light, and that's what's separating them from the background. But that bare head that's pointing directly into the shop is really important because the shop is too dark. Let's go to the photo here. Go to my, if I just show you the shop itself with nothing, it's just, there's nothing in there. It's not coming alive inside the shop. Now the shop was going to be closed by the time we got this shot, so I didn't want to be putting a light inside the shop because they were going to be gone and I wouldn't be able to get my light back out of the shop. And so instead we put the light inside or just outside the window, and you can see now that see all that stuff, these little ribbons are lit up. There's just stuff happening inside the shop now because we lit them up with a flash. And that flash is, I think, is pretty important to help look like the shop is alive with stuff happening inside of it. But the other thing that happens from those two lights is that you have a lot of glare coming in here from the side, and that makes it feel like that's a natural sunlight coming and raking across. See how it rakes across the building here? So it helps to create more shape to the building because now that edge has a nice line in it. So it looks like the sun is striking off this side of the building, creates an edge, shows you that there is some, you know, depth here, so you get a lot more depth off of it. You can also see that it lights up, so that light that's pointing at the building is also coming and passing the building, and it's striking this wall as well, and it's creating a nice, you see that angle that's going up and down, so that's creating some nice angular stuff going on there and lighting this up. So it's you got light and then shadow and then light and then shadow. You got light and shadow. So it's because of those alternating light and shadow situations, you've got a lot of volume being created in the photograph. So if you look here, that this light, see how that the bare heads just kind of, they almost go like that. And so there's just so much light coming around like this, and this is actually coming through from here and lighting up this part of, I probably drew this a little too far. It's actually probably right about here. That head is probably right about here. And it's just coming around that building too. And so this head is not only creating the light inside the building, it's also lighting up the building, and it's lighting this part of the building, as is this one. This one's lighting them up, and hitting this building just a little bit as well. So that all of this light here is really, really useful. This light it's important, but it's almost incidental. It's not quite as critical, but it's just creating that soft light forward on them. So that's that shot. I really like that shot. I think it turned out really well, but it's all about the light. Without those backlights, I think the shot would be fairly flat. But this is another situation where we went into complete open shade. So we were in complete open shade for this shot. So that allows me to sculpt that shot. Go into open shade and then relight the shade the way we want it to look. Okay, so let's go to our, let's see, what should we do? I think we've got enough time for one or maybe two more shots. So I'm going to go to a really complicated shot here. Seems fairly simple, not very difficult shot, but when you look at what has to be done to this shot, it's pretty complicated. This is what the place looks like if you just take a picture. It is really dark inside that area, which I like the shade because then we can relight it. But notice all of the dark shadows, and all of the trees are dark. And so in order to get the blue sky in the shot, and in order to get the building, the archway back there in a correct exposure, you have to then match that light. So that's what we did and we used all four of our heads. So we put the models in there, and that's what you get with the models inside the shot with no flash. And so we need to now light them. So let's roll the video and let's just see if we can. This is a really, really complicated thing to shoot because there's not a lot of room. But the first thing that we're using is a shoot-through umbrella with a back panel on it. So there's no wasted light. All of our flashes are at full power. So every single one of our flashes are at full power in this shot. And so you can see I've got a rear light back there, and I've got two other rear lights behind the ladies, and then one one umbrella, shoot-through umbrella. So let me find my, there we are. Okay, so here's our schematic for this. So here's the archway here. Just behind this wall, we've got a bare head hidden. And that bare head is coming forward like this. And that's what's lighting up all of our, so this light coming forward here is lighting up all of these trees here. And it's also creating a little bit of, if you know, here's our two models here, and they're walking forward. And this light is giving them a little bit of a rim light as well. It's also rim lighting, you know, this and this, these two columns. But then also, if you go back to the shot, notice that in the shot, you've got those really dark shadows on the columns. So we have to light those up as well. So now we go back to the schematic here. This bare head, its job is to light this column and all of this area here. And then this bare head, just a little bit forward, its job is to light this column and all of this area and this side of our models. And this one is obviously giving them a hair light as well. So all of these are forward light for our models, and so they're giving them some rim lights and some separation, but they're also lighting the entire area, filling in those shadows. So basically consider all of this, all fill light for the background. And then we've got our deep translucent umbrella here on the flash with a back panel. And that back panel is really important. So you're shooting through the umbrella, but if I was shooting through that umbrella and I didn't have the back panel on it, there would be a lot of light being wasted going backwards behind the flash. So by putting on that panel, and you can see that panel right here, by putting on this back panel onto the flash, none of the light is being wasted coming back this way. So I'm able to shoot full power and get all of that light to match. Because I'm telling you, this shot, it was just so dark inside of this area. You had to have full power flash because you only got 500 watt seconds on these particular flashes. It's not like we're using plug-in flashes. And so full power allows us to get a really nice shot. And you can see that it's this kind of omnidirectional light. So it doesn't feel like a real moody shot. It's just, it's almost like there's just a big ball of light floating around for him. And so I really like the way that shoot-through umbrella looks. But that back panel is really important. So that's fairly new, I think. So it's a really good, useful tool. So you can see how that's all done. That, I think, is all the time we have for it. Let me just see if I have a quick question or two. Why shoot-through umbrella versus a reflective umbrella? Well, okay, that's a really good question. I'll answer it very quickly. There is a big difference between a shoot-through umbrella and a reflective umbrella, and it's basically directional light. So a shoot-through umbrella is creating light like this, and it's everything's getting lit like that all the way around it. It's like a big ball of light, and the light's going in omnidirectional. Whereas with a reflective umbrella, because of its shape, its concave shape, it's pushing light in a very specific direction. And so you get a harder edge on the light. If you were to point it directly at the floor, you would actually see kind of a circle of light, even though it's nice and soft. Whereas with an omnidirectional type of light, there is no edge to that light. It just keeps going. And so it's just a softer, more beautiful light. So I really like a shoot-through umbrella, but I love it with the back panel on it because then I'm not wasting any light. Okay, that's all the time we have for today, but thank you for joining us at the Profoto webinar. A couple extra housekeeping issues. We have no webinar in December. Everybody have a wonderful vacation or winter break or whatever it is you do. Everybody seems to go on vacation, so we will too. So we will see you next year in 2015. So please follow the Profoto blog, follow Profoto on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitter, at Jared Platt, or you can go to my blog, jaredplatt.com, and find out where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing in 2015. Until then, have a wonderful winter break. Don't freeze out there. I know I won't because I'm in Phoenix and we have warm, sunny weather. But to all of you who have to brave the winter, I feel for you. I hope you'll come to Phoenix and visit. So take care. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.